So thinking right now about what you can do in this moment to further yourself. Better health is in the next 5 minutes. Better health is in your next meal. Better health is in your next movement session. I feel like presence is crucial in our journey. And okay, this moment, what can I do in this moment instead of trying to worry about too much in the future?
What's up, everybody? I'm your host, Patrick Cook. Welcome to Being. Being is a place where we gather to explore some of life's most difficult questions. What does it mean to lead a meaningful life? What does it mean to live a life of purpose or on purpose? How do we make sense of the world? Really, what we're asking is, what the hell is going on? My intention with this podcast is to explore what it means to be human in the modern world through the lens of creativity, consciousness, and personal development. Through authentic conversations with a wide array of guests, including artists, intellectuals, scientists, visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders, Being ventures to make collective sense of an increasingly complex world with the unifying goal of building a sustainable future for all. As humanity continues to march full steam towards extinction, we can no longer afford to simply ask, what is best for me? The question now must become, what is best for me and the whole simultaneously? And so, dear audience, I want to inspire you to take full responsibility, to find your purpose, and to engage your evolution as a conscious agent. I challenge you to live your being. If you're enjoying the content, please do subscribe to the show and get a new episode delivered directly to your device every Friday. And as always, I love hearing from you. So please do rate and review the episode on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or whichever platform you prefer. And hey, I might even read your review on a future episode. Here's another 5-star review from Sam Kern, who says, "These are the conversations that the world needs, and Patrick is the perfect host to lead them. Can't wait for future episodes." For show notes and more information, head on over to being-podcast.com. Now, on with the show. With over 20 years of experience as a personal trainer, online coach, youth fitness specialist, author, and presenter, Mike Howard has orchestrated meaningful, individualized solutions to thousands of clients around the world. He's also gained international attention for his philosophies on body composition, youth fitness, and matters relating to fitness and nutrition education. He's the author of 2 books, including the recently published Lean Minded, 50 Days to Mind and Body Transformation. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mike Howard. Mike Howard, welcome to Being. How you doing, brother?
I am doing great. Thank you so much for having me on, Patrick.
Awesome. So Mike and I were connected through a mutual friend, Cameron Hughes, who actually was on episode 6 of the Being podcast. Super fan Cameron Hughes. If you don't know who he is, go check out that episode. Fantastic guy. And he connected us after our interview. And Mike was gracious enough to send me his book, Lean Minded, 50 Days to Mind and Body Transformation, which is absolutely jam-packed with wisdom and great tips and tools and techniques, which we are going to dive into shortly. But I thought the best way to start, because I don't know much about you, and so I'd love to introduce you to the audience and learn more about you. So how did you get to where you are? Because you're a personal trainer, you're a life coach, you're a fat loss coach. How did you get to this place? Like, give us the short version of your trajectory.
Yeah, okay. So I'll make this as short as possible because it has been a pretty circuitous route that dates back 20 plus years. So I've always had a love for fitness, health, that sort of thing, and worked in various places and gyms and in different types of environments. It just, everything's just sort of evolved into, I started working with young people, and then I started diving headlong into the mindset and habit aspect of change. So so basically going from a lot of the physical X's and O's stuff to really taking a deep dive into the human psychology and neurobiology of things. I started kind of geeking out on that. And then, so to this day, I love the one-to-one training. I still have a brick and mortar business of personal training, but I've branched more into, the online space now, and just more coaching people, coaching change, and less of the hands-on. But I still have a very, very much a passion for that part of just seeing people, right? And COVID's changed a lot of different things and a lot of dynamics of what I do. But yeah, still in the space. But yeah, I've been through a lot of ups and downs over the past 20 years. But I love it, and I want to continue to do this and continue to pursue this because I do feel like it's a calling. So yeah, and then just branching into more things like writing. I found myself doing more writing in the past few years. So yeah, I just released a book in November and hoping to release one within the next 6 months again. So yeah, that's a bit about me.
Amazing, dude. So I just wanted to ask you about a little bit more about your personal story. So was there like an incident or like a rock bottom or a dark night of the soul that really catalyzed you into taking action in your own life, like as a transformation to get healthy? Was there that moment for you?
Yeah, so I would say, I would say a few moments. As I said, alluded to, there were some ups and downs, and my route wasn't a linear one. And yeah, no, I found myself sort of a single dad, and just kind of struggling to make ends meet for a long time. And I was working as a courier to help pay the bills, and there were times where I was like, I probably have to give this up and give up this dream of continuing my calling as a personal trainer or health fitness coach. And yeah, no, I got into my own rut. I got into my and just habits that were not reflective of a health, what a health professional looks like, and battled crippling insecurity and just self-doubt, all of it. And then it was when I started reading into the mindset aspect of things. And my aim in that was to be able to help other people as best I could, but it was basically putting up a full-length mirror of myself and saying, yeah, you know what, you're not acting the part. And just I needed that kick in the pants, I guess, as it were. And just, so there were moments like that just kind of sparked me to action, and just that self-reflection of saying, yeah, you know what, you need to do better for yourself so that you can do better for other people, so you can do better for your kids, so you can, just, yeah, I just felt like there were some doubt, some dark times in my life that I just, I really needed to figure that out for myself so that I could advise people that may be going through something similar, and not try to be this perfect health professional all the time, and embracing things like self acceptance, and embracing things like self compassion, but also embracing accountability. And yeah, just in I'm still a work in progress. Absolutely, I'm still working on myself, and hope to never cease working on myself. And yeah, I just, yeah, want to be that better human, I guess, and leave the world a little bit better than it was when I was here. That's the ultimate goal, I guess, with anything.
Love it, man. So, yeah, I've only been in the coaching sphere for a couple of years. And I think, especially in the last couple of years, there's been a lot of people entering that arena because there is a low bar of entry, right? And so, coaching in all modalities has sort of gotten a bad name because there are a lot of, inauthentic, charlatan type of people in the sphere. But when I meet people like you who are really walking the walk, doing the work, looking in the mirror, you are the real powerful coaches, right? Showing vulnerability, showing the authenticity, showing the willingness to continue to learn and know when you're wrong, or and being willing to admit when you're wrong. I think that's what makes a really powerful coach. Somebody that can show up and hold space for other people, but also be vulnerable at the same time. And it's so important. So I love the work you're doing, man. I read your book. It's fantastic. So many things came up for me when I was reading it, and so many similarities, between the way I sort of engage clients and the way you do, but with some different language. So I'd love to unpack some of your perspective on some of it. At the very beginning of your book, Lean Minded, it says, "What a time to be alive. We are all here on this planet trying to navigate a crap storm of unfavorable evolutionary wiring in a modern environment of overabundance." I love that
Hmm.
phrase, but I'd love to hear more about what that means for you.
Yeah, for sure. And interestingly enough, that was pre-COVID. So there's even more of a crap storm of things going on right now, right? So our environment is just completely like, yeah, it's a really strange time, even stranger time than it was like 7 months ago, I think, when I released that book. Or maybe it's even longer. Oh my gosh, it's actually almost like 10 months. So yeah, time is flying by. But yeah, so for that, it's just I think I wanted to encapsulate the problem I think that almost all of us face really is that we have this ancient brain wiring. Our brain was put in place eons ago when, the best way to save was to consume, right? So we had a brain that was built, our hardware, as it were, it's instinctive. It's based on survival. It's based on mating. It's based on just everything that is going to help us get to that next day. And so we still have, although there's software that's being put onto the hardware, and we've developed more of our prefrontal cortexes, we still have a lot of these intuitions that are coming from the ancient limbic system of our brain. So we still have that, but we've been plunked down into this modern era, this modern world of abundance, an environment that we basically, in our first world, have access to hyper palatable, delicious food right at our fingertips, and we have all these technological advancements that are basically just keeping us on our butts. So we have those two competing entities, and that's what makes this whole journey so darn difficult in so many ways, is that we're fighting unfavorable biology and environment against what is really human frailty.
Mm. Totally, man. And what came up for me when you just said that is ego is a big part of that programming, for evolutionary biology programming. Um, but also the survival instinct, which is the ego is basically responsible for. It's there to keep us safe, right? It's also to give us an individuated sense of consciousness, but ultimately its
Mm.
its primary goal is to keep us safe, right? So it's always
Hmm.
looking out for danger and threats, right?
Yeah.
And in the past, it used to be a lion. If there's a
Yeah.
lion in the savannah,
Absolutely.
you get eaten. So that's
Yeah.
that's a good defense mechanism. But now the
Hmm.
lions are all inside of our heads,
Mm.
right?
Hmm.
All the
Hmm.
threats are coming from internally. And so I love how the first 29 days of your 50-day program is all about mindset. I love
Mm.
that. How many health and fitness coaches or even life coaches talk about mindset with that much, it's so important. So I love that.
Mhm.
And it's crucial in creating any sort of transformation in your life, be it from,
Mhm.
addiction recovery or losing weight or
Mhm.
overcoming trauma, whatever it might be. And then one of the quotes you say is better health comes down to alignment of heart, mind, and environment. So what
Mhm.
exactly does that mean for you?
Right, and I feel like that has to all be in something harmonious. And it's not to say that it's going to be perfect or it's going to be linear, but I mean, you have to have that desire, that deep why of change. So you have to have something within you that does want this, that it is part of your values to be healthy. Because if it isn't part of your values, if it's just an abstract idea, it's never really going to happen. And I've learned that from experience, both vicariously and personal experience, is that it does have to be part of your core desires to want to change and to want to progress and to want to align with who you are and who you want to be in terms of somebody that's healthy. So we're aligning that with both of our mindset, but also with our environment. So we have to take agency in all of those realms to be able to align all those and bring them into this um, harmonious thing where we're able to sort of step out of our comfort zone, step into the unknown, and just kind of erase a lot of our fears, our preconceived ideas of what we may have thought was true, because a lot of our reality is perception, and we have to start chipping away at those perceptions and those dysfunctional mindsets to bring ourselves to that place where we can improve.
Yes, totally, man. It's amazing how much overlap there is actually between your sort of coaching modality and mine. Like I primarily work with clients around addiction, but also nurturing creativity and sovereignty and agency. And in your book, you talk a lot about like removing blocks and mental programming and mindset. And it's like it's amazing. And relapse is another thing that I want to ask you about. But first, you mentioned willpower, and that's a big one that comes up for me, especially with the alcohol clients I work with. Because definitely in my journey, when I was trying to overcome my own alcohol dependency, I would take 30 days off, 60 days, 90 days. I could do that stretch of time with willpower. It's like I'm going to do this, like I'm determined. But like you said, it comes down to forming the identity of who you want to be. Because if you're just taking action for the sake of action, it's like, oh, well, I don't really know who I'm becoming. And so you have to do that inner work, right? And so willpower is great for short term, but willpower is like a muscle. It erodes over time. So it's not enough. We need to do
Mm-hmm.
that internal work to uncover, like, what are the unconscious mental, cultural, social programs that are running in the background, that are influencing our choices and behavior. What are the emotional wounds or the trauma that's
Mm-hmm.
influencing our behavior, right? And so when you said you have to connect to a why, that's absolutely true. But what I've found with some
Mm-hmm.
clients and some people is that they don't know who they are. They don't
Mm-hmm.
have a sense of identity because really, we're playing these roles in society where we're wearing masks and with different people, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
it's like that's kind of what happens in a midlife crisis. You get to this point, it's like, wait a minute, none of these are me. Then who the hell am I?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So tuning into that identity, and so I wanted to ask you, like, how do you work with your clients to develop the identity, to develop the values of the person that wants to be healthy? Because the other thing that comes up is a lot of people don't feel they're worthy of happiness or health or success.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So even if they're taking the steps to do weight loss or personal training, they don't get the results because they don't believe it on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you manage that
Mm-hmm.
with your clients?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and everything you said was yeah, bang on. I when I'm looking at, and that's part of what I do with the goal setting is we do take a look at, okay, well, why do you want to accomplish this? Because yeah, you're right. A
Mm,
lot of the time people are, okay, we don't know who I am, and I don't want to, and that's definitely for them to figure out. I feel like my role as a coach is to just give you some templates, give you some ideas, and from there I have my client just kind of run with that, give that some thought, just come up with something somewhat tangible that is going to align with something that is important to them. And I think we make a lot of assumptions sometimes that, oh, people just should want to be healthy because, and
mm,
that's not necessarily the case. But sometimes, for me,
mm.
okay, I have a couple of kids, I want to be able to be there for them, I want to be able to hang out with my grandkids. I live in a beautiful place where there's a lot of great hiking, so my part of my why is to be able to go on these hikes until I'm well advanced age. But somebody else's why might be completely different, and they have no idea, and they may have no idea. Like, okay, I think what we're trying to do is get that thought process going, get those mechanics going, get those gears going, and try to get people to think deeply about that. Because at least if they start to think deeply about that, then that's a step in the right direction. And you're right, sometimes they don't know, but I think if you give them that framework and just having them ask their own questions about it, and they don't necessarily need to have this well ironed out, polished why they do things, but it does help them to
Mm.
think about what's deeply important to them. And you can almost connect health to everybody's, no matter what is important to them. There is always some sort of connection to health, I feel, anyway, because it spills into so many other aspects of life.
Oh my God, 100%. Your physical health affects you. It's like a revolving door with your psyche. Like if you're feeling bad, your
Mm-hmm.
mood deteriorates, and vice versa. If your
Absolutely.
mood is poor, your body feels bad, right? So it's a
Mm-hmm.
connection, the mind body connection, and that's so important to cultivate both of them, not just one or the other. You
Mm-hmm.
talk about in your book the inside out modality, which I absolutely love
Mm-hmm.
as well. And this for me is primary to personal transformation, is doing the inner work, and so we can show
Mm-hmm.
up in the outer world, in our relationships and our family. But one of the most beautiful things about that is that it spills out. Like that's the sort of micro model. If you do
Mm-hmm.
the inner work, you become this person. But it's also true for me of society, and this is why this work is so powerful for me. It's got this macro
Mm-hmm.
element. It's like, okay, how do we change the world? It's from the
Mm-hmm.
inside out as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
it starts on the individual level, but then we start connecting with tribe and community, like-minded people, and then all of a sudden we're creating a community that is healthy in their own right, but then the entire community is healthy, and that's how we change the world from the inside out on a larger scale. And that's an idea that's super exciting for me. So, kudos to you and all the other coaches that are doing this powerful work, and the people, ourselves included, that continue to show up vulnerably and look at their own shit to heal our wounds, to take control of our health, our physical and mental health. Like, this is powerful work and so needed right now in the world. I think it's of utmost importance. So kudos to you and all the people you're working with, all the people listening that are doing the work to heal themselves. This is how we change the world from the inside out. So yes, yes, yes. So I want to come back to relapse, because that's something obviously that
Mm-hmm.
comes up with me with my addiction clients. But you
Mm-hmm.
talk about relapse strategy for dieting, right? Or fat
Mm-hmm.
loss. Can you
Mm-hmm.
walk us through that?
Yeah.
I wrote some notes: self-forgiveness, self-reflection, and back at it immediately. Right? Is that right?
Yes, yeah, exactly. And I think so much of this comes back to that self forgiveness, self reflection, because I feel like a lot of where people go wrong is the just the you know beating up of the self. You just being way too hard on yourself. And I feel that it all starts with that self compassion. And there's mountains of literature too that suggest that being self compassionate is way better for getting back on track than being like self deprecating or self defeating or hey, I'll never do this. So it all comes back to that. So I think my favorite way to look at that is, how would you advise a friend? Because we tend to be softer on our friends than we do on
Mm,
ourselves. So, if your friend says, "Oh man, I've gone off the wagon," are you going to be like, "Oh, you idiot," like get back on there? Like, you would never say that to you. At least you wouldn't have many friends if you did, right? But
yeah.
that and yet we give ourselves permission to sort of beat ourselves up. So I think if you're coming from a place of self forgiveness, and again, as long as that there is that self reflection, which is the same side of that coin, right? Is saying, okay, you
Mm,
know what, I messed up. It's not the end of the world. I'm going to move forward, but learn from it. Okay, how did this happen? Why did this happen? What came up beforehand? What was the emotional trigger that led you to that path? What was going through your head? So if we do that work and the self reflection, that's important too, because then our lapses become less and less frequent. They become less and less powerful, and they have less of a stranglehold on us.
mm,
And so that last part is just getting back on it right away. Like, don't dwell on it, don't ruminate, you don't have to do too much of an archaeological dig through it. Just take that first
mm.
step back. Take that first step back, and then you're going to fall again, and then take another step. And I think
Yeah.
one of the biggest um, factors of long term success is being able to manage those dips when you do fall off, because we all know that
Mm,
a bad day of eating or whatever it is can turn into a bad week, which can turn into a bad month, right? So it's that
mm,
resisting that urge to say, screw it, I've had a bad week, I'm just going to kind of go full bore until the end of it. Or it's a bad time right now. But if we get ourselves into that mindset of, you know what, I'm just going to stop it in its tracks, and not give that any more power over me, and we're just going to take that first step back, and just keep taking that
mm,
step. And yeah, so I feel like that relapse planning is crucial, because your progress is never going to be linear. It's never going to go like that. It's going to be up and down. And if we manage those dips, we manage those downturns, those off the wagon times properly, then our progress is going to continue.
mm. Beautiful. Yes, you will have dips. I think that's so important to remember. But ultimately, it's
Mhm.
the trajectory in general will be moving upward, right? And that's the goal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So managing the dips, I love that. You talked about self-reflection, or self-awareness is the way I sort of reference it, as
Mm-hmm.
related to self-love. Absolutely, self-love is of paramount importance. And you're right. The
Mm-hmm.
way we speak to each other, or to ourselves, I should say, is just awful compared to the
Mm-hmm.
way we would treat our loved ones, right? So
Mm-hmm.
why don't we
Mm-hmm.
treat ourselves with the same amount of love? And I've found,
Mm-hmm.
even with cultivating self-awareness, the deeper I cultivate my self-awareness, the deeper the layers of my lack of
Mm.
self-love or my negative self-talk is like, holy
Mm-hmm.
shit, I'm an
Mm-hmm.
asshole to myself, a lot of the time.
Yeah. Oh, for
Right.
sure.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
oh my God, it's awful. It's awful. But like you said, it's how quickly you can recognize it. And this is why, for me, practices like meditation or journaling or anything that gives you some mindfulness, which you talk about in your book a lot as well. Anything that cultivates mindfulness will shorten the gap between when you recognize a stimulus, a negative thought or a negative self-talk, and when you react to it. You can open that gap, right? Rather than it being just one negative self-talk and response, or negative thought and response, which is what the conditioning, unconsciousness is. You open that gap, and now you have a conscious choice. Like, oh my God, there's that thought again, and it keeps coming back. But now I see it. Now I see it, and I have a choice not to react to it, right? And so
Yes.
that's where
100%.
so much power in this is about cultivating that
Mm.
self-awareness, so you're not
Yeah.
reacting to those negative thoughts, right?
Oh yeah, hundred
Yeah,
percent. It's like
beautiful.
yeah, yeah. It's like no, and just to quote Mark Manson, right? He talks about the self-awareness onion, and you talked about the layers. He's like, and
That's right.
I hope I don't massacre the quote too badly, but he said, yeah, it's like a self-awareness onion, but the deeper you peel, the more you're going to start crying at inappropriate times, right? But you have to start, but you have to keep peeling away at that self-awareness onion,
Totally.
right? So yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's it. Just made me think of that, but like, yeah, it is, yeah, for sure, absolutely.
I love Mark Manson. I've read all his books, and I remember that quote, and it's totally true. And it never ends. The onion never ends. Like, I was just speaking to another colleague the other day. It's like, who's a coach, but still is
Mm-hmm.
peeling back the layers. Like, how deep does this go? It never ends. And so it's more about coming to terms with the uncertainty and the discomfort and the fact that it will never end. You're constantly growing, and that's the beautiful thing of it. It's like
Oh,
you're
for
always
sure.
getting better, but you always have to
Yeah.
be doing the work as well.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely, for sure. And I think eventually you do learn to sort of detect the, emotions from the emotional sensations, right? Emotions are real.
right.
They should be dealt with. And that's different from an emotional sensation, which is just basically just a transient sort of, and nothing that we should give too much credence to, but we tend to sort of ruminate on them a little bit too much. And that's from Dr. Schwartz. So he made, yeah, he
Mm.
wrote lots of books on that and just reframing and things like that. But yeah, I just thought
Yeah.
of
Can
that.
you unpack that a little bit for us? Like, what's the difference between emotions and emotional
Yeah,
sensations?
yeah, yeah. So I think this is Jeffrey Schwartz I'm quoting. I'm almost 100% sure, but anyway, he's a psychiatrist, and he works a lot with I think it's stroke rehab. So he was one of the pioneers in this whole idea that this whole idea of neuroplasticity, where we can change the wiring of our brain.
Mm.
So he states that and emotions are real, like, and we are serving ourselves better by paying credence and giving those emotions their due and unpacking those. So those could, I mean, and those are very real, like sadness or loneliness or what have you. Whereas emotional sensations are more fleeting. These are just those momentary things where it's like, okay, I'm bored, or and the response
Mm.
tends to be something like eating. It might be eating for some people, it might be drinking for other people, it might be mindless scrolling
Mm.
for other people, or it might be shopping, whatever it is you're using to medicate on that. But yeah, but he suggests that we sort of we we not give those the attention that they deserve, right? We find distractions for
Mm.
those, whereas we unpack things that are based in real emotions, whether you're getting, whether you need therapy for that, or you just need to sort of sit with it or meditate on
Mm.
it. But emotional sensations are something that are just fleeting. So there's something you can tend to wait out. So I talk about in the book, like sort of a 10 or 15 minute rule. Okay, if you're if your
Mm.
instinct is to go find something salty or sweet, to give it 15 minutes. Maybe it's just, something transient. Maybe you're just bored. Maybe you're just temporarily, feeling something negative, or something was triggering today. Somebody spoke to you in a negative way, and you're trying to cope with it. But, just those tend to be the ones that you can just wait out. And, 15 minutes later, hey, if you want that, whatever it is you're craving, go for it, and eat and enjoy it mindfully. But that will probably pass in 15 minutes, right?
Mm.
Whereas the
Mm.
true emotions are more deep seated. Those are ones that we may take a little bit longer, and do our due diligence to help navigate.
Mm. That was awesome. Thank you for giving us some clarity about that. And what came up for me was kind
Yeah.
of different languaging, but the same idea.
Hmm.
And you can reflect if this resonates for you. But the emotional sensations could be like the ego. It's like
Mm.
that
Absolutely.
dramatic, mind centered ego that just wants satisfaction, gratification now,
Hmm.
versus the deeper emotions, which are your sort of intuition or your soul wisdom. Because that's for me
Mm.
what emotions are. There are our inner wisdom that are there to provide us with guidance. Like they're our
Hmm.
emotional guidance system, right? And so
Hmm.
we should be listening to our emotions, but the emotional sensations are just the fleeting thoughts of the ego. It's like, oh, you're bored, you deserve this, or drink that drink, or eat that ice cream, or whatever it is, right? So that's another way to frame it. And I didn't really understand that when I read it in your book, and now I've got, oh, okay, I get it. That's kind of
Hmm.
how I would frame it.
Yeah, and you articulated it way better than I did, so that's good. Thank you for that, because it's good. It's just sort of piggybacks. I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I like how you put it.
Yeah, no, totally. And this is why it's so beautiful to speak with like people like yourself, other coaches and stuff, because we're doing a lot of similar work, but we use different modalities. We use different
Hmm.
language, different approaches, different perspectives. And to really
Hmm.
feel it and see it from different perspectives deepens my understanding, which and
Hmm.
then
Hmm.
adds more value to the work I'm doing with my clients. So this is beautiful. I love it. Um,
Hmm.
and a lot of, like I said, a lot of the things that you use in your practice with more of the modalities around fat loss and personal training are very similar to the modalities I use, right, for personal transformation and addiction. So it's amazing how much overlap there is. You wrote about the 4 Ps, which I really thought was
Yes.
awesome.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear about the 4 Ps. What are they?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, essentially, I think this entire journey and the success of this journey and the sustainability of this journey comes down to basically four words that happen to start with the letter P. So, number one is having patience, and I think as a society, we're an instant mentality society. Like we're used to getting things
Mhm.
right now, and I think, and you combine that with dubious marketing and the lose 2 pounds a day or whatever it is on the magazine cover or your
Mm.
bookshelves or whatever's online in terms of the programs. We've been thrust into this false reality that things should happen instantly. So the first P is patience, like having patience for this process, knowing that it's going to have its ups and downs. It's going to take longer than you think it is, because that's just the way it works. So the next P would be persistence. So just really being doggedly persistent with your goal, and just resilient, and whatever you need to get back on that horse, proverbially speaking, and just being an absolute, the best promoter of your own health you possibly can be, and just being, yeah, just absolutely, vigilant with your own health. The
Mm.
next one would be practice. So we everything we do is going to take some form of practice. So a lot of my realm is fat loss and better health. So a lot of the practice involves skill based practice. So it might be cooking healthy meals. It might be engaging in different forms of exercise or strength training. It might be arranging your home in such a way. It might be the skill of or grocery shopping. So whatever you're practicing to better your health or take yourself forward is of utmost importance. And then the last one, I think it is presence. So being present is absolutely huge, because we tend to just get lost in our day-to-day thoughts or day-to-day grinds, and we lack a lot of what I would call presence or present moment. What can I do right now to advance my health? Because
Mm.
better health is in the next 5 minutes. Better health is in your next meal. Better health is in your next
Mm.
movement session. So thinking right now about what you can do in this moment to further yourself. And instead of thinking about the limitations, I'm working all day. Okay, well, take 5 minutes and do a mindfulness session. Take 5 minutes and do a mobility circuit. Take 5 minutes and cut up a pepper. Take 5 minutes and just do and just plan out your next meal. So I feel like presence is crucial in our journey, and it gets lost. And I got
Mm.
this squirrel ADHD brain where I'm always thinking about a million things, but I'm learning to be more okay. This moment, what can I do in this moment, instead of trying to worry about too much in the future, and getting too caught up in what's happened in the past, obviously. So yeah, so those are the 4 P's. So presence, persistence, patience, practice. Yeah, so those are the keys. So I think there's something that I always fall back on. It's those principles.
Amazing. Yeah, love that. Yeah, those are really powerful principles too. And there's more alliteration, more P's, powerful
Yeah, exactly.
principles.
There's a fifth P. There you go. That's my next book.
There you go.
From Patrick. That's my sixth P. Patrick. Yeah.
There you go. There you
Everybody
go.
can read the
Awesome.
book going, who's Patrick? Yeah. That's awesome.
Awesome. Hey, are you feeling lost, frustrated, angry about the state of the world, but unsure what to do about it? I get it. The world is a pretty messed up place right now. Yet, in these interesting times of shattered realities, many people are using alcohol to escape and numb their feelings of anxiety, dread, and uncertainty. I know, I did it for years. This is why I've made it my mission to support brave souls in mastering their inner world and finding a deeper sense of purpose. To that end, I created Reset 2020. Reset is a personal transformation mastermind group with the intention of resetting your relationship with alcohol and becoming the best version of yourself in an empowering, supportive online community. To check out more about Reset 2020 and to watch my masterclass video, head on over to go.patrickcooklife.com. Remember, Cook is spelled with an E, Cooke. So it's go.patrickcooklife.com. All right, now back to the show. So I also read on your website that you don't advocate for a specific diet. And I thought that was really interesting because a lot of these, programs you see online or on TV or wherever, they have these, the Atkins or whatever it might be.
Mm.
So how do you determine what is the best diet for a specific person in their body?
Yeah, I love that question. And so, yeah, I take a very agnostic approach to diet. I've always been more of sort of a flexible, do what works for you kind of an advocate. So
Yeah.
finding something, not going to be one best diet for everybody. And so people have
Mm-hmm.
to find what works best for their own personal taste, their own circumstance, their own, cooking ability, their family situation, their work situation. You have to fit all of those factors in, because I find with the diet industry in general, it's basically they're trying to pound the square pegs of dietary rigidity into the vacillating shapes of real life. Is usually how I put that. So there's basics that I have people adhere to, and then we set up systems onto how to best conquer those. So, for example, I mean, for me, it's just I can describe it in less than 30 seconds. Eat mostly minimally processed foods, adequate protein, get enough fat, move enough, and lift heavy stuff, and basically, and drink enough water. And then, other than that, you've got free reign as to what you do and how you manipulate the different variables, right? So I basically I'm less about the X's and O's, less about the specific foods, less even about the macronutrients in terms of your macros, so protein, carbohydrates, fats. But I just advocate for get as much minimally processed foods as you possibly can. Make sure you have enough protein to keep you full. Cram as many vegetables down your gullet as humanly possible. Drink water, and now let's figure out what we're going to do in terms of your process goals or your goals behind the goals. to make that happen. And so we work backwards from there. So that might mean, more grocery shopping trips or more consistent grocery shopping trips. Okay, what do you have to do to get those grocery shopping trips in? Okay, you have to make time for it. Okay, that might mean you have to wake up 15 minutes earlier to do a little bit of food prep. What does that mean? Okay, it means go to bed half hour earlier, 15 minutes earlier. So we work backwards from there, and we try to put as many of these locks into place as humanly possible so that you can set your environment up for success.
Yes, amazing. Great answer too, because it's not one size fits all. And one of the things I kind of live by, which I heard, which resonated with me, is if you eat 80% of your diet that comes from the forest or the garden, you'll be doing okay.
Mm,
Get
absolutely.
enough
Yeah,
sleep,
yeah,
drink enough water.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. And
uh,
sleep's huge. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, no, you're so right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, and then
yeah,
if they want to try some sort of fasting protocol, or they want to do lower carb or paleo, I'm like, okay, knock yourself out. If that works for you, that's great, because the best diet is the one that works for you. Not,
yeah,
there's nothing magical about not eating breakfast, or or
yeah.
reducing carbohydrates. It's just another way to put you into a calorie deficit. So, and if those ways work best for
Right,
you, that's awesome, good for you, and we'll
right.
find ways to sort of coach you through that, and help you best accomplish that.
Yeah, amazing. I do want to ask you about fasting, but I also want to ask you about veganism first because I encountered I experimented with veganism because I'm an intuitarian is what I call it. Like I eat
Okay, yeah, yeah,
intuitively, right?
nice,
But
yep.
the more I sort of awaken and go down the path that I'm on, the more I'm becoming aware of what my consumer impacts have on the planet, right? Factory farming meat, for example, is incredibly bad for the animals and the suffering, but also the toxic waste that it creates. So I did experiment with veganism for like 6 months, right before COVID, actually, and it was awesome. It was really interesting. I learned about a lot about myself. I learned a lot about my unconscious habits and just stuff I do because that's what I've always done. But I also, went through a period where I felt sort of lightheaded or, headaches or, so, and when COVID hit, I was like, okay, now's not the time for poor health or, in any way, be it from whatever practice. So I started eating meat, although I started eating meat that comes from a local farm, which is ethically produced. So that for me feels like a good compromise right now. But so what is your sort of view of veganism or the global impact of our food choices?
Mm. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's, looking at things at a macro level, absolutely. And I think,
Mm,
veganism can work very well for a lot of people. And I think, as a lot of our global attention is on environment and the impact of human induced climate change, I think, that
mm,
is definitely a viable and very, I think it becomes a very tempting option for a lot of people, and it is
mm,
on the rise. I think there is a lot of awareness behind it, and I think it can work very well. And I think you're almost a prime example of somebody who's eats intuitively, and you're consciously aware of these different factors that go into it, and you also had that intuition to say, okay, right now the full vegan isn't working for me, but I'm going to do the next best thing and just do something that's more like grass-fed, local, sustainable farming.
mm.
So, and it sounds like you found a good sort of happy medium, and who knows, you might go back to veganism, and that might,
Yeah.
you might find later on that works for you. And but I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. I think, I think for moral ethical purposes, it absolutely does. It does make intuitive sense, for sure, absolutely. And I
Mm.
think, like you said, you just watch out for certain things. Not everybody thrives on it. You want to make sure that you're getting all the micronutrients, especially the B12 and the
Yeah.
vitamin D, things that don't
Yeah.
necessarily come from plant based foods.
Yeah.
So just being careful of that, monitoring your energy levels, and just paying attention to how you feel with it. And
Mm.
yeah, no, I think absolutely it's a completely viable option for a lot of people. You know, I,
Mm.
I I outsource for people that are looking to get into vegan diet, to people that know more about it than I do. from a coaching
Yeah.
standpoint, but I certainly have worked with plant-based people as well, and they know what they're doing, right? So I'm guiding them more from like
Yeah.
a more holistic perspective, or more of a comprehensive perspective with their coaching and fat loss, and just making sure they're in a deficit within the context of their plant-based diet.
Yeah, I love that, and again, it comes back to self awareness. Like I was just saying, how much are we eating just unconsciously, or because that's what we've always done, or that's what our parents ate, or and then how much are we eating because of those emotional sensations we talked about earlier, like you're bored or whatever it might be. You're tired or you're sad, which is a fleeting emotion, but yet we reach for the potato chips or the ice cream because it makes us feel better in the moment. But tuning into, okay, well, it does it make me feel better 20 minutes from now? Does it make me feel better tomorrow? And the answer is most typically no. Um, and this has come up for me actually in fasting, because I've done some occasional fasting, just with pipa water, coconut water, for 5 or 6 days, and then just for water for a couple of days. And one of the most fascinating parts of that, apart from feeling amazing, there are moments where you're just like, oh my God, I'm freaking out right now. But if you can sort of move through those, you get to this point of clarity and depth of presence. Like, oh my God, I'm so in tune with everything right now. But then from that space, you become aware of how much, for me at least, how much I eat for distraction or procrastination or boredom, all the reasons that are not hunger or nutrition, right? And so actually the last time I did it, this is really interesting. I had my journal right beside me when I was working. And every time I thought of food, I thought of eating, I would make a mark, like I'm counting days in the jail cell, right? And by the end of the
Mm.
day, I had like an astonishing amount of marks on my paper. How many times I thought about eating that had nothing to do with hunger. It was all about the emotional. It's like, I don't want to be doing this work right now. I want to distract myself in any way. Maybe I'll go have lunch. It's like, wait a minute, I'm not hungry. you know?
Yeah. Wow.
Uh,
Yeah.
so that was one of the major benefits of fasting for me, apart from obvious other ones. But I wanted to talk to you about fasting in general. What's your position on it? Is there benefits? What is the best modality? Is it different for everybody?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think one thing that you touched on, that what I'll start with, is that I think what you're doing, which a lot of people don't, is just taking that deep dive, that deep stock of how you're feeling, like just with the journaling. And I think that's huge. That's
Mm,
enormous, right? And just like, okay, like every time I think about distraction, why am I thinking about that distraction? I think, yeah, absolutely.
mm,
And it sounds like it's had some tremendous benefits from me. And anecdotally, I think a lot of people have had that sort of what you described as clarity, and a little bit of
hmm.
euphoria behind it. In terms of
Yes.
like I'll try to break it down as quickly and efficiently as I can. With fasting, I think there are definitely some benefits for sure, absolutely, in terms of like controlling blood glucose. There are certain overselling of it in the fasting world, because I think, like anything, there's dietary tribalism, right? So, but what I think
Mm,
fasting works best for from people is in two realms that I work with. Is number one, as a plateau breaker. So if people are doing things just the same way and that nothing's happening, I
yeah.
will suggest it. I will suggest it in sort of like a 16-8 fasting. So basically, like an 8-hour eating window and a 16-hour um, fasting window, in essence. So if people are going to
Mm,
go this route, first of all, make sure there's no issues with hypoglycemia or things like that. But I think people do well with a little bit of structure. And if they have that little bit of structure, then they can work around that. And I think for some, that is a catalyst of change. Otherwise, it's maybe a little bit too loosey goosey for them. If I just say, okay, here, just keep things within these parameters and go. Sometimes they need that little bit of extra structure, and sometimes that little bit of extra structure, in the form of shrinking that eating window, will help them develop better habits around eating. Um, and
mm.
like I said, I do prefer to start off like with like maybe 3 or 4 times a week at this 16-8 protocol. And then if you want to stretch it a little bit further, you can. I think that's the best way to go, though, is what I call a modified daily fast, right? Or a daily time restricted eating window. And then, if they want to experiment with like full days of fast or the true intermittent fasting, like the 1 day on, one day off, then try that. But just also be aware of both the physiological implications of, like if your blood sugar is particularly low, or you feel like your energy is really bad and it's not improving. Know when to call it, know when to say, okay, maybe this doesn't work for me. But also from a psychological perspective, there are some people that fall into disordered eating patterns that way too. Sometimes it's a gateway towards that, but
Mm.
overall, I think it's fine. I think, if people want to try that, I think that's great. That's another thing that they can try that's minimally invasive, and provided that your eating choices within that window are pretty solid, there's adequate protein in there, there's adequate nutrients. Hey man, go for it. That's awesome. Like I said, I'm pretty flexible
Mm.
in terms of what people do in terms of eating, as long as it's nothing too terribly extreme. So yeah, that's a bit of a nutshell.
That's awesome. The 16/8 is something I've followed personally, and it's awesome. I
Hmm.
really enjoy it.
Good, good,
It gives me a lot more energy. Yeah, a lot more
nice.
clarity. Yeah, it feels really good. But what you said about, and it comes back to self awareness at its essence.
Hmm.
Everything we're talking about is self awareness, and that for
For
me is at
sure.
the root of transformation. Any
Hmm.
transformation is self awareness. You have to become
100%.
aware of what you're doing, what your unconscious habits are, and what you
Yeah.
called it a plateau breaker. See, that this is another example of the same concept, but I use a different term. I use pattern interrupt,
There
right?
you go.
And so
Like it.
so when you're caught in unconscious patterns, or programming or whatever it might be, we have to introduce a pattern interrupt so you can have the context, the contrast, to understand what you've been doing. It's like, oh, I didn't even know I was doing that. It was on
Hmm.
autopilot, right? And so
Hmm.
introducing that pattern interrupt, and fasting from the diet perspective is a great way to do that. Um,
Hmm.
Awesome. So much. Your book is so amazing. It's called Lean Minded. I highly recommend everybody get it. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. But another part of it that you mentioned was flow state. And flow state's another thing I'm
Mm.
deeply passionate about. So I wanted to ask, what does flow state mean to you? How do you get into it? And what triggers you out of it?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I did sort of touch on it. And getting into flow, that's the whole idea of just you're finding that intrinsic value of things, which means doing something for the sake of doing it, right? And the
Mm.
godfather, the OG of flow, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. I hope I pronounced that right. I've spent like 4 years of my life trying to
Mihai
pronounce
chicken
that.
soup.
Yeah, yeah,
Dude,
exactly. Mihai
his name's
Csikszentmihalyi. But
impossible to
anyway, yeah,
pronounce.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But anyway, yeah, I wish it was a guy named Bob that invented it, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. No offense to the Europeans. I love you all. But yeah, so anyway, so he's yeah. Yeah, so so his basic philosophy is just being completely and utterly engaged in a task. And I think and I fully admit to being kind of a noob about all this thing, because with my you know
Mm.
ADHD prone squirrel brain, I'm like all over the place. So mindfulness for me is like a real kind of like, okay, it's a stretch, and it's hard work for me. So getting into that flow
Mm-hmm.
state sometimes is a little bit of an issue to try to kind of distract myself enough to get into that state. But I think for me, it's just no matter
Mm.
what you do from a health enhancing standpoint, to just be mindful of that present moment. Know how you want to feel about a certain thing, and then do your best to feel that sensation. So when you're in flow, even if it's an uncomfortable sensation, you're embracing it, and you are just taking it for what it is, and you're paying attention to how you're feeling in that moment. And that's when sort of time flitters away, and you can be engaged and zoned in
Mm.
to whatever that activity is, whether if you're out on a run, or you're in a lifting session, or even if you're like cooking, you're taking in the sensations. A lot of what I've been writing about now is mindfulness as it pertains to fat loss and cooking and eating.
Mm.
So just taking in every sensory experience of it, the full multisensory experience. So if you're cooking, okay, paying attention to the smell of what you're cooking. You're about to eat, get a sense of the
Mm.
mouthfeel of it, get a sense of the texture of it, and take a few breaths in it, and then just being engaged. And that's when you kind of get into a state of flow. And the trick is getting into a state of flow of things you don't inherently enjoy, because people are like, yeah, okay, the running thing, that'll never be flow for me, or eating
Mm.
broccoli, that's not a flow state activity, right? But I think it's about embracing that and just thinking about, okay, if it's not something you enjoy inherently, that's fine too, and just paying attention to those feelings and why, and also just maybe refocusing your thoughts on what it's doing for your body, right? Just like, wow, these nutrients are hitting
Mm.
my bloodstream, or this is amazing that my heart's pumping, and what it's doing for my long-term health
Yeah.
is awesome, and what an amazing thing my body can do right now, just getting into that kind of a state. So that's what flow means to me, and
Mm.
hopefully I haven't bastardized Mr. Csikszentmihalyi's ideas too much, but that's kind of, I've taken it and run with it, and so there we go.
Awesome, dude. I love that. I love that definition. Mindfulness, getting into flow, being aware of what you're doing. Again, self-awareness. It all comes back to it, like honoring the moment and everything you're doing in it, whether it be cooking or exercising or whatever it is. Amazing. Again, so many overlaps in your book with, some of the concepts that I use and I talk about a lot. And one of the biggest ones is the definition of success. I was like, oh my God, he's got a whole chapter about it. This is awesome.
Yeah.
But one of my favorite questions to ask my guests on the podcast is, what is your definition of success and how has it changed over time?
Yeah, yeah. So for me personally, and just to give a quick overview, I think in the book I talk about definition of success in terms of just not following what society's definition of success might be for you, right? So we live in a very
Mm.
comparative society, and that's been fueled and amplified through the prevalence of social media, right? We've become even more of a comparative society. We could be feeling completely great about ourselves, and then we'll go on the Instagram feed and, oh my gosh, there's all these perfectly curated, bodies and things like that, especially in my realm, right? And so it's just, yeah, you can get discouraged, and yeah, we do have a very competitive, um, and just easy, like, again, it's a Mark Manson quote, but with the internet, it's open sourced information, but it's also in open sourced insecurity and extremes, and we gravitate towards these extremes. So my advice for people is to find your own definition of success, and it doesn't have to be the definition that society places on us. It can be your own, and that doesn't even have to be weight loss. If you don't look, even if you feel like you use a few pounds, it doesn't necessarily have to relate around your weight. In fact, I think that the weight loss is a side benefit of changing your habits and transforming through habits, and
Mm.
doing it that way. So I really highly encourage people to find their own definition of success. Even though we do set goals, we go through that whole process. Find out what works for you within your own life, your own lifestyle, your own
Mm.
circumstances. So for me personally, I mean, I've got like a definition of success that is more sort of a micro level and specific level when it comes to my own health and fitness. But on a more macro level, I mean, my definition of success, I think we touched on it initially. I can't remember if you hit record there or not. Maybe you did, but it has to do with leaving this planet in a slightly better way than when I was here. So leaving
Yes.
an impact on the world somehow, and just, I feel like, on the other side of 40 now, I just you start to think about things in different ways, and it becomes less about getting ahead. It becomes less about possessions. It becomes less about the material things in life, and it becomes more about drawing closer to people that you care about, and really nurturing your
Mm.
social relationships. So a lot of, my definition of success is just being of service to those around me, impacting lives around me, and then just feeling fulfilled, and that's open to interpretation. But fulfillment for me is more like,
Mm.
yeah, just being able to nurture, they being close to people that I care about, having some form of health that allows me to do things that I enjoy, and I happen to be active, and I enjoy things that are outdoors, and hiking and whatnot, and skiing in the winter. So things that I want to be able to do for a long, long time to come, and just being the
Mm.
best, son I can be, the best father I can be the best, like, partner I can be, and just I think that for me is success.
Fantastic. So much of what you just said resonates deeply for me as a father as well. Cultivating our close, intimate relationships, our social dynamics, leaving the planet a better place than when we arrived. Those are all powerful motivators and embody a feeling of success, which isn't the typical societal, money, house, car, job, career, blah, blah, blah. Right. So that really resonates deeply for me, man. Beautiful. Mike Howard, this has been incredible. So amazing to drop in with you, brother. So proud of all the work. Thank you for all the work you're doing. I have one final question before I let you go. And it is this. If you were to take all of your experiences, all of your knowledge, all the wisdom gained, and distill them down into one message for people to hear, what would it be?
Ooh, love that. Okay. You know what? I think, to boil everything down into one kind of soundbite, I think is just, you know, do the very best you can under the circumstances that you have. And just, that should be enough. You are already enough. Just do the best you can under any given circumstances. And you know what? Good things will happen. Even if the chips don't fall exactly where you want them to, great things will happen when you strive to just, step out of that comfort zone and do whatever you can in this very moment, the best you can.
Mm, fantastic. That's a perfect way to end. Mike, thank you so much.
Love it.
Please
Yeah.
share with the audience where they can find you and your coaching and your book, Lean Minded.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Patrick. This has been an amazing conversation. So I appreciate it very much. So yeah, you can find me leanminded.com on social. Instagram is at leanminded, facebook.com/leanminded. And yeah, my book's available on Amazon. So just if you want to punch in Lean Minded, 50 Days to Mind and Body Transformation, it's there available on Amazon on either Kindle or hard copies. So yeah, I feel free to reach out, and yeah, I love having these conversations. So if anybody out there has questions, I'm happy to answer them. But thanks again so much, Patrick. This has been a blast.
Amazing. Mike Howard, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your knowledge. And I'll put all those links in the show notes for everybody to get in touch with you. And I highly recommend Lean Minded. I read it. It's jam packed with wisdom and knowledge and tips, and it's highly readable. So definitely go pick it up. Mike Howard, thank you so much. Have a great day, brother.
You as well. Thanks, Patrick.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. And if you enjoyed the show, please do subscribe, rate, and review. For more information and show notes, head on over to being-podcast.com. We'll see you next time, and remember, live your being.